I think younger consumers absolutely understand buy now, pay later. They're using it to purchase on, Amazon and whatever, websites they're buying other stuff from. They see these options at that checkout. It'll be a no-brainer for them when they're looking at a treatment plan and they see, cash, credit, check, and buy now, pay later options like Wisetack.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another episode of Growth in Dentistry. I'm Katie Polson, and we are excited to continue our conversation in June on getting paid and all that entails. But before we get started, I wanted to do our due diligence here of making sure that you are aware of our Facebook Dental Intelligence podcast community. Come join like-minded data nerds and come learn from one another. And also go and rate and review this podcast. We read every one of them. Thank you so much for those that have done that for us. It really does help a lot in our quest to provide great feedback and a great podcast for those that are listening. And then also our current customers, if those of you that are listening, we have launched an incredibly valuable tool inside your growth platform or your dental intelligence growth platform tool called the DI Community. You can access that in the Help Center. It's a space where customers can go and ask questions from each other. It's kind of like a little mini dental town or DI face or like a Facebook community. So come join like-minded people there. And then obviously this podcast is brought to you by Dental Intelligence. And for those of you that are we've got a great giveaway for those listeners on the show. For those of you that want to go to get.dentalintel.com/podcast to get a $50 when you complete a demo. And that information will also be on our show notes. So with that being said, we've had a very exciting last little month here at Dental Intelligence with Modento and the integration of a great company called Wisetack. And we've got Bennett Winton here. Hello, Bennett. Thank you so much for joining. And we're so excited that you could join us, talk a little bit about in-house financing specifically, and then how it relates to like what Wisetack does differently. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the integration with Modento, which is really exciting, and go from there. So first of all, this is a weird space to be in, dental tech. So how did you get here?
It's a great question. So my name is Bennett Winton. I am a strategic partnerships manager at Wisetack, and I lead our go-to-market for the healthcare industry. That includes dentistry, veterinary, and other medical specialties. So I joined Wisetack about a year ago. I came out of 5 years as a strategy consultant for tech companies, and I wanted to work on a product that had real world impact and could serve people better than existing financing tools. And I saw a great need for that in dentistry. It's the first sort of sub-vertical within healthcare that I've really focused on. And I think there are a number of reasons why, dentistry is ripe for financing disruption, and happy to go into those. But basically, I think dentistry is a really large market. There are a lot of, everyone needs dental work, and most people need more than they're getting. It's really expensive. Dentists are used to using financing tools, but historically there haven't been really great financing tools, and happy to talk to sort of how we're different there. There are also really wonderful software companies like Modento and Dental Intelligence who make great partners for us, and all of our go-to-market is through partnerships. And then finally, the existing incumbent lenders, I think we stack up really nicely against them. And so that's why my focus has been on dentistry, and the launch of this Modento partnership has been a wonderful experience, and super excited to tell all of the listeners about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. And you used a word that I've heard before in this space, but maybe it's not one that gets played around with, which is financing disruption. And I think that's a really great way to describe what we're going to get into today, and why dentistry is ready for that. So you've have in a background. I mean, in-house financing it's not a new idea. I've been in dentistry for over 20 years, and we've provided something to that effect for a while now. But a lot of those solutions that people are using, they started them and then they are outdated, or they kind of aren't servicing the practice very well. And so I guess fintech has changed the world, and now it needs to change medicine, I think, and dentistry. So I guess, how has fintech changed the way patients pay for dental services? And I'm sure that this relates to financing disruption and how dentistry is ready for that.
Absolutely. I would say that there are two major waves in fintech disruption as it relates to dental services and small businesses in general. The first major wave is payments, credit card processing, and I'd say the second wave is lending, which is just arriving. So payments, of course, over the last 10, 20 years, we've seen the cost of payments, of processing payments go down, been a lot of competition. The fees that dentists have to pay to process credit cards have gone down, and it's become incredibly easy for patients to pay that way. And you, of course, have innovations like text to pay and other convenient ways that don't require a credit card swipe in the office. However, consumers know that credit cards are a great way to pay, but they're realizing that they're not a great way to grow. And if you can't pay off your credit card at the end of the month, you're incurring significant fees and compound interest. And so there's a need for better financing products to avoid that. And so I'd say the lending fintech wave is arriving in a bunch of different industries. And you see this in e-commerce with Affirm and Klarna and Afterpay providing simple interest loans for consumers. But most of the real world spending doesn't happen online. It happens in real offices with professionals like dentists providing incredibly important care. And they've been underserved by modern financing options up till now. And so we're trying to bring the innovation that we've seen in payments and in lending to dentists and other small businesses so that they have better rates for consumers, better terms, that they themselves, the dentists, don't have to give as much out as a fee, and ultimately give the patients a better user experience that's seamless, transparent, and easy.
Yeah.
And
really,
happy to elaborate on.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I think we should, because I definitely feel that the patients are totally ready. I think they're starting to understand a little bit. I mean, and there's definitely a lot of education that still needs to happen when it comes to educating the patients on the fact that like dental insurance is not necessarily for a lot of people the best way to go about getting your dental work done. So yeah, I guess, can you expand a little bit more on like how you've seen that work, I guess, how to educate dental patients? Because I think that's really where the world, like, people are like, oh, I would love to offer financing or to go fee for service, right? But I just feel like I can't, because like the patients aren't there yet in their mind. So many people feel like they need to have dental insurance to get their work done. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah,
it does. And I think dental insurance where it works is great, but there are many Americans that don't have dental insurance. I think I saw a stat that like 75 million Americans don't have dental insurance, and like 2/3 of small businesses don't offer any sort of dental insurance. And all of those Americans need dental care. And so if they're not going to be able to have it covered through insurance, then it's got to happen some other way that's affordable for them. And in addition, dental insurance doesn't really cover the high cost, unexpected health events that we all know occur in everyday life. I've had my own set of dental high cost sort of, emergency scenarios, and it's really expensive, and dental insurance didn't cover all of it. And so I actually had to split up one of my own treatments over 2 years so I could double dip on my insurance and get more coverage. But I do think consumers are learning that there are good ways to pay outside of using dental insurance. And as I mentioned, in e-commerce, it's becoming incredibly common for people to use buy now, pay later services to pay for everyday goods. And it's simple interest loans with no fees. And I think the e-commerce focused buy now, pay later companies have done a great job of showing people how great of an experience that is. And now companies like Wisetack, we're bringing technology to the dental industry through our integrations with wonderful software companies like Modento, so that we can offer buy now, pay later experience and terms to the patients and lower the cost to the dentists themselves. And so I'd say it's only just arriving, and I think patients are going to be incredibly happy to see that they can get similar terms to what they would get online in their offline transactions.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you for sure. What are some potential areas of opportunity that you feel that are missed from practices that say they want to start to offer a financial solution, or maybe they want to upgrade the one that they currently have? Uh, I like to use opportunities missed instead of what are people doing wrong. It puts a nice little lovely spin on it. But what do
For
you,
sure.
yeah, what do you see often?
Well, uh, I'll speak to the dentists and sort of what impacts them on choosing a financing provider, and then also the consumer, because of course, when the dentist is choosing a financing provider, they're considering their patients and their
Mhm.
needs.
Right.
So for the dentists themselves, there are many differences between the different financing companies out there. First of all, what is it that you're paying in a transaction fee for the ability to offer financing? At Wisetack, we charge a 4.9% rate, and that's a flat rate. No matter what the consumer, what their credit profile is, that it would always be 4.9%, which is not only significantly cheaper than some of the existing alternatives, but it's also consistent, and you can forecast that, and
Mm.
that if you're going to offer financing, it's going to be 4.9, and you don't have to guess based on what you think your patient's credit profile is, how much you're going to have to pay to offer financing. Merchants also have to deal with who takes on the risk. And there are a lot of financing companies that either don't take on the risk fully, or maybe they claw back funds if a patient stops paying them. At Wisetack, we take on all the risk, and we don't claw back the funds from even if the patient stops paying us over time. So that's a big thing to consider, is
Mhm.
especially if you're moving from doing your own in-house financing to a third-party financing provider. One of the major reasons why you do that is you want to get paid up front and not over time, and you don't want to have to deal with the risk. So
Yeah.
make sure that you're considering that in your selection process. And then also when you get paid. We pay our dentists the next day after treatment is provided, and having that money up front risk-free is a huge just relief, I think, for a lot of these dentists who are used to taking on the risk themselves, and not seeing that revenue for many months or even years. So that's
Yeah.
sort of the dentist side of things. But of course, the dentists are considering what the patients are going to experience in that financing. And it's not clear when you look into many of the financing options whether there are credit cards or installment loans. Many of the financing providers traditionally in dentistry have been traditional credit cards. They give you a physical card, and it's an
Mhm.
open line of credit, versus but it of course comes with all of the associated fees and terms and conditions that credit cards have, versus simple interest installment loans, which is what we offer, and a few other financing companies also offer that. So you need to know sort of what it is you're offering. And then the user experience is incredibly important. You want a patient to be able to come into the office and ideally have same day treatment if they can, and be able to pay for that with financing same day if they can. And there are many financing providers that require lengthy application processes and hard credit checks that provide a lot of friction in the process, where a patient might be hesitant to try them, or it might take them time to get signed up and then have to come back later for treatment to confirm that they can even use that as a method of payment. And of course, some financing providers have very tight um, credit bands that they serve, and you do not want to have to deal with a patient getting declined for your financing while they're in the office. It's just a very awkward experience. So,
Yeah.
for example, at
Yeah.
Wisetack, we go down as low as 540 FICO, and that gives us about a 90% approval rate.
Mm.
So it's an option that can serve everyone, and people will get simple interest rates that match their credit profile, while the
Mm.
dentist is just paying 4.9% every time. So I think it's consistent, it's easier, and you don't have to deal with the worry of people getting declined. And
Yeah.
finally, I think one of the major innovations that we're bringing is that integrated user experience. That we are a tech company, all of our product is delivered via API into Modento, so that natively within the existing user treatment plan experience, when a patient's in the chair, they've been seen by the hygienist and the dentist puts together the treatment plan and presents it to them. Wisetack will be sitting there as an option for payment at checkout, just natively in there. It takes away a lot of the knowledge burden on practices to have to pitch financing. Whereas with Wisetack, it's sitting there, patients understand buy now, pay later and they can make that choice for themselves without the dentist having to understand a complicated set of pricing grids and promotional terms and how to pitch those, or whether or not they should pitch those to every patient. And I think that brings up a really interesting point, which is dentists don't necessarily know who does or does not need financing. And so you should be offering financing to everyone. Even people with good credit will want to use financing for certain things, particularly if they're getting a 0% interest plan. So I think those are some of the major considerations. And I also wanted to touch on, finally, one thing that you mentioned, most dentists already have a financing platform. And I think it's totally okay that dentists take on multiple financing. If someone wants to adopt Wisetack in addition to the Care Credit or whatever financing provider they already use, that's great. Give patients options, and then see which one works better, see which one makes the patients happier, and which one's easier to use. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a rip and replace. It could be just adding another tool to your toolkit.
Yeah, I love that you said that. There's two things I wanted to touch on, and that was one of them, is specifically, I mean, we talked all last month about case acceptance and getting treatment accepted. And obviously one of the biggest friction areas is paying for the work, right? And if you can have a form, I mean, you can do this without Modento, it's just easier. To have a treatment plan right there and just have all of the options, and you provide them to everyone every time. It's you're not making assumptions on someone's ability to pay. I mean, if you've been in this game long enough, like I've made really poor assumptions of someone that couldn't pay, and they're like, what are you talking about? I just want to pay all of this. Like, just, it's $5,000, no big deal. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay, like you do that one time and then you realize, okay, it's not my job to assume their ability to pay for anything, right? And so I really love that. I love the ability to just have it as one of the options that you offer every time. Because I mean, I've done many of these like zero financing loans just because I'm like, well, I don't want to spend my money on that right now. I would like to do something else with it. Right. And it's 0%.
Completely.
Right. And so I think there's a lot of people, especially in our generation, I'm assuming that you're somewhat close to the same age as me,
Yes.
that are okay doing that because we understand, like, we just understand this change in Fintech and what it's allowed us to do.
Totally.
And we're the generation that's going to start spending a lot of money here in a little bit with dentistry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think younger consumers absolutely understand buy now, pay later. They're using it to purchase on, Amazon and whatever, websites they're buying other stuff from. They see these options at that checkout. It'll be a no-brainer for them when they're looking at a treatment plan and they see, cash, credit, check, and buy now, pay later options like Wisetack.
Yeah.
It'll be just sort of intuitive for them.
Yeah. Because it's so personal, right? Like, it's so like, how do you know that, the limit of is it $200? Is it $2,000 that someone's willing to pay up front? Like it's just so personal, and it depends on what's going on in their life. And so to offer all of those, and also it means, like, from a case acceptance standpoint, it means we don't care how, and we're here to give you all of these options, because what we really want you to do is we just want you to get the work done so you can get healthy. Right. So
exactly.
I
want to touch on one thing you just mentioned there about, not knowing what a patient may or may not be able to afford before they walk in. And one thing that I think Fintech is doing that's wonderful is, no risk prequalification, where you can send a patient a link to their cell phone before they even come into the office, or even as they're sitting in the lobby or even in the chair. Yeah. And with no risk to their credit score, they enter a little bit of information and they get pre-qualified, and they know, maybe that patient is approved up to $15,000 of lending. And that information is extremely valuable to the dentist, who now knows, hey, this person, not only can they afford what I think they want, I can actually provide all of my range of services and treatments to them and let them decide what they want. If someone's considering getting dentures, maybe they can also pitch implants, because if they can afford it, I think the implants will be a better option for them in the long term. And maybe I also pitch in whitening, and let the consumer decide. But instead, it takes a lot of the burden off of the dentist from having to pass judgment on all of the patients and try to figure
Yeah.
out what they should offer. Just offer everything every time and give them good options to pay for it. And I think that just improves the entire dentist experience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you just said that. And I love the pre-qualified. And many people are moving. I mean, many people are offering, we did a segment on teledentistry, right? And being able to like talk to someone over the phone, especially cosmetic work, like somebody like wants to like have imaging done or whatever, and just to like, this is how much, I mean, it might be really great for case acceptance, and it also might be good for chair time, right? Like if someone's like, I want like, 12 veneers, and they are qualified for $2,000, that's like, you're like, okay, well, let's not really put you in the doctor's chair for 2 hours. Let's start in hygiene, and we'll figure out really how we can get you to achieve your goals, right? So
Totally.
so I love that idea of pre-qualifying without the risk of, checking their credit or anything like that.
Totally. And it also is great, not only for, optimizing chair time, but just getting people into the office. Every dentist has plenty of patients who they've seen, they've given a treatment plan that I think you need, this $5,000 worth of work, and that patient walks off and doesn't come back because that patient doesn't think that they can afford what they need, or maybe they've got other expensive things going on in their life and dentistry is less of a priority for them at that moment. But if you can send them a pre-qualification and they realize, oh, actually, I do have access to lending, and it's going to be, it's going to be reasonable rates with no, hidden terms and gotchas, that empowers the patient, and that could bring them back into the office to get that treatment that they're putting off. So I think it's a great way to, serve patients that you've already seen and who haven't gotten that work done.
Yeah, definitely. And any of you that are listening that have worked, as I've been thinking about this month, I've been really thinking about like, what would it look like if financing, like if like I didn't have to think as a provider about the money at all. Like, what would that look like? How would I diagnose? How would I treat my patients? How, like, what would we talk about instead of money? Because so many of us spend so much time talking about money with patients. And I had the opportunity to work at the VA hospital, and in dentistry, I taught dental hygiene. And and for those of you that are listening that have had that opportunity to work in a clinic like that, where everything's paid for, right? It totally changes the way that you treat patients, because you offer everything that you feel like could be a good, you don't have to make assumptions like, well, they can't afford the implant, so I'm just not even talk about that, right? You talk about everything. And I think that is what all of these options do for you as a provider. It allows you to say, I don't need to worry about that piece, because we have so many options, we can figure that out. I'm just going to talk about what I think should be done. And that's really freeing as a provider,
and that's why dentists became dentists. They want to help people. They want to treat people and make them feel better about their oral health. And it's sad when money gets in the way of someone getting the help that they need, or the treatment that they need. And so that's one reason why I'm incredibly proud to be working at Wisetack and working with Modento, that I really do think that our financial products are really fair to the consumers and are going to empower them to get work done that they might not otherwise have. And I think that's good.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's get into that, just that little piece of it. We don't need this to turn into a Wisetack and Modento ad, because it's all right. There's many options out there like Modento, like Wisetack, but we'll talk to you a little bit about how we're different, and maybe you want to look at it. So what are the exciting changes? And why is Wisetack different, I guess, from other options?
Yeah. So I think primarily we are a technology company, and we're incredibly focused on the user experience, both the dentists and the patients. And it's our goal to make them happy. And I'd say one data point on that is our net promoter score. We ask every patient who uses our service to rate us on a scale of 1 to 10. Would you recommend us to friends? And 85% of our borrowers rate us a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Our net promoter score is 79,
Mm.
which is incredibly high, not just for financial services, but for most products in general. So we're making people happy, and most of the sort of written feedback we get is that this is the easiest financing experience that I've had, and my rates were great. So that, I think, is primarily, we're making people happy. That's proof. How we're different in terms of sort of fees and terms and all that. We give every patient multiple options to pay over 3, 6, 12, 24 months. Each of those has a simple interest rate associated with it. We don't do any compounding interest, and we have no fees, not even a late payment fee. So no prepayment penalties, no origination fees, none of that. So that transparency, I think, is incredibly important to us, and I think it's a breath of fresh air in an industry where there are a lot of financing options that have lots of terms and conditions, like deferred interest, where if you miss a payment or if you don't pay off the whole loan in the promotional period, you have a lot of deferred interest dumped on you. That's something that we will never do. And I think our patient-facing terms are just so much better than that.
Yeah.
And then I think,
can I interrupt
please.
and then we'll do
jump
the
in.
second one?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a hard question, because this was something that my dad was always like, I always have my dad in the back of my head saying, like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, So that's incredible. How do you guys offer that compared to everyone else that just can't?
Totally. It's scale. We, as a technology company, we serve many different industries, from dentistry and veterinary to home services like plumbers, electricians, HVAC, to auto repair, to even legal services. We're really focused on offline businesses that don't have access to modern financing. And so through that scale, we're able to get better cost of capital and pass on those savings to both our merchants and to our consumers.
Great.
And we're not optimized to have the largest profit margin. We're actually a really low margin, high volume business. And so through the scale that we have, lending across many different industries, that just enables us to give better rates. And ultimately, we want to drive the cost of lending down to where payments is. At 4.9% to use our lending service, it's only a few percentage points higher than credit cards. Yeah. And I think that is one of the big pushes in the innovation of fintech for offline businesses is, let's get lending down to the cost of payments. We'll make it as easy as payments, and we'll give people terms that are better than payments. But it's only really possible because of the scale at which we operate.
Thanks for letting me interject. I was just thinking, like, I know that there are people thinking like, well, yeah. There's got to be something that's hidden, but that makes sense.
Totally.
To me,
and sure. I appreciate that skepticism. Those are exactly the types of questions that everyone should be forced to answer, because there are a lot of hidden gotchas in financing traditionally.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't want to cut you off. Is there anything else? It's such a great product, but
thanks. I would say that being natively integrated into treatment plans, we've already covered it a little bit, but that is very differentiating. And of course we have direct, text a link to a patient to have them pay as well, built into Modento. So I think the user experience through that integration is really differentiated. And I think to the merchants, we take on the risk and we give them a great price.
I would definitely
those
say
are the major points.
The user experience between like Modento and like just the Wisetack experience is really, really great. It's in the industry, we call it the UX, like the user experience. The design of it is very, very clean and simple and easy to understand, which can be very opposite when you're talking about financing. It seems like, there's always some sort of long thing that they want you to read and whatever, and it can be very cumbersome. So I've really, from a UX perspective, I really enjoyed looking at your software. It's really great.
Thank you.
So we asked the same question to all of our guests on this podcast, because growth means so many different things to everyone. So what does growth in dentistry, which I'm excited to hear your perspective, because you're in so many different arms of industries. What does growth in dentistry mean to you?
To me, it means providing more care for those who need it. And I think of oral health as, it is a leading indicator of overall health. And most people don't get enough dentistry work done. And ultimately, that's a negative impact on their happiness and health in the long term. So growth in dentistry to me would be getting people into the office, making them feel comfortable, relieve their anxiety about what's this going to cost and can I afford it? And just getting people the treatment that they really do need. And doing that in a way that's fair and transparent, I think, is a really wonderful thing that we're able to do. I just want to see more patients in chairs getting work that's going to make them feel better and ultimately live more healthily.
That's great. That's awesome. That's a great answer, especially from someone who's not been in dental for very long. So we're real grateful to have good minds like you. So, well, this has been growth. Yes, this has been Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast. Again, special thanks to our guest Bennett Winton from Wisetack. Where can they find you if they want to?
Absolutely, I would encourage anyone to reach out. My email and LinkedIn will be provided after the show. Feel free to reach out over email or LinkedIn, and I would be happy to get in contact and answer any questions.
That's great. That's great. And then Wisetacks, we'll have Wisetack. It's Wisetack.com, right? That's the
correct.
Yep.
And if you go to Modento's website, you can probably also find a page about the integration.
Yes, exactly. So you can find out those links and other information by visiting our webpage as well at dentalintel.com. Thank you to our marketing department for all their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Poulsen. Keep growing.